Before the video begins, ladies and gentlemen, a quick PSA. Those of you guys that don't know about this, I have a second channel called Crasher Talks and More, where we focus on more serious content as well as some cringe humor. Now, on to the video. How's it going, everyone? You got your boy Corey here, aka Crasher, pretty guys, a new exciting video. Ladies and gentlemen, let's get to it. So what we got going on here is a kind of video I haven't done in quite some time for you guys, and that is a Pokemon Sword and Shield competitive guide. Now, a few days ago, I put up a poll on my community tab, and with 268 of you voting, 65 voted for Incineroar. So that is what we're going to be doing here in this competitive guide. We're going to be doing a guide on how to use Incineroar. So without further ado, guys, let's begin. So taking a look at Incineroar's basic information, we have ourselves the Fire and Dark typing, which is a really solid typing offensively and pretty decent defensively too, in my honest opinion. Now, as for the abilities, we have ourselves Blaze, which is normal amongst Fire starter Pokemon. What this does is when you are knocked down to about a third of your health, your Fire type moves will get a 50% boost. And we have its other ability known as Intimidate, which is going to drop the attack stat of your opponents by one stage. And I gotta say, Intimidate is where it's at, baby. Now, when we take a look at the strengths and the weaknesses of the Fire and Dark typing, the resistances goes as follows. Fire, Grass, Ice, Ghost, Dark, Steel, and Psychic, which is actually an immunity, which is super cool. Now, what isn't super cool is its weaknesses. We have ourselves 4 weaknesses, that being Water, Fighting, Ground, and Rock. Now, because of its Rock weakness, it's obviously going to be struggling with entry hazards like Stealth Rocks. Now, taking a look at its stats are actually really freaking solid. So, we have ourselves 95 on the HP, 115 on the attack, 90s in both the defense and the special defense, 80 in the special attack, and 60 on the speed. So, this Pokemon isn't meant to be super fast, but this Pokemon also isn't super slow either, especially with the right setup. Now let's get into the first set that we got going on here. This is known as the Banded Incineroar set. The ability for choice is going to be Intimidate. The item of choice is going to be Choice Band. What this does is it locks you into the first move you select, but it will boost your attack stat by one stage, which is hella awesome. The EV spread goes as follows. We have ourselves 252 EVs into the HP, 252 into the attack, and 4 into the special defense, with an adamant nature to further juice up your attack stat by that much more. Now, as for the moves of choice, we have ourselves Flare Blitz here. Flare Blitz is one of the most amazing moves that Incineroar could ever have access to. This is a base 120 fire type move with a 10% chance to burn, but beware of the recoil that you suffer whenever you cause damage to your opponent. 33% of that recoil is going to come back and hurt you. So the next move that we got going on here is actually a brand new move that it gets access to in Sword and Shield, known as Close Combat, a base 120 fighting type move, and this is really solid. It's going to deal solid as hell damage, but be aware of the fact that it will drop your defense and special defense by one stage after every single use. Next up, ladies and gentlemen, is its signature move, Darkest Lariat. Now, I understand that other Pokemon have access to the move Darkest Lariat, but damn it, Incineroar is the one that brought it on in the first place, so it's still its signature move. Fight me on it. Anyways, Darkest Lariat is a really solid base 85 Dark type move that hits for very consistent damage and will deal damage regardless of the opponent's boosts in their stats. So, in other words, this move will hit right through the stat boost of the opponent, which is absolutely amazing. And last but not least, guys, we have ourselves a really good type coverage move in the form of Thunder Punch, a really decent base 75 electric type move that will deal super effective damage to water and flying type Pokemon. So next up, ladies and gentlemen, is the Scarfed Incineroar set. The ability is going to be Intimidate. The item of choice is going to be Choice Scarf, which has a very similar function to Choice Band, except rather than boosting your attack stat by one stage, Choice Scarf will boost your speed stat by one stage while locking you into the first move you select until you switch out. As for the EV spread, we have ourselves 252 EVs into the attack, 4 into special defense, 252 into the speed with a jolly nature, so you can have a little bit more speed and be as fast as naturally possible. Now as for the moveset here, we have ourselves Flare Blitz as its fire type stab, and also the strongest fire type move that Incineroar has access to from a physical standpoint. Next up, we have ourselves Darkest Lariat, which again is really solid. It's really consistent and will hit through any stat boost against your opponents. Now, next up, we have ourselves Close Combat, which again is a really solid fighting type move, and with the combination of fire, dark, and fighting type coverage, this is going to make this Pokemon insanely versatile when it comes to matchups against any other opponents based on type effectiveness. Now, last but not least, guys, we have ourselves U-Turn, which is a respectable base 70 bug type move that will allow for you to switch out after you make your attack. So for the next set, ladies and gentlemen, Swords Dance is the name of the game, baby. Woo! Let's get started here. So the ability, once again, is going to be Intimidate. The item of choice this time is going to be Leftovers, which allows for you to restore a little bit of health at the end of every turn. The EV spread goes as follows: 252 EVs into the attack, 4 in defense, and 252 into the speed, with a jolly nature once again to give you as much natural speed as possible. Now as for the moveset here, Swords Dance is the first move we got, which is going to boost your attack stat by 2 stages. Next up, ladies and gentlemen, we have ourselves Knockoff, which is a very solid dark type move, one of the best moves overall in the game in my honest opinion. It is a respectable base 65 dark type move, however, it will deal 50% more damage whenever you remove a held item from your opponents. Next up, ladies and gentlemen, we have ourselves Drain Punch, which is also a very respectable base 75 power move. It is of the fighting type, and whenever you deal damage, half the damage you inflict is going to be converted into health restoration for you. And last but not least, guys, we have ourselves Flare Blitz, which is just overall a very amazing base 120 fire type attack. However, it does have the drawback, aka recoil. Now with a set like this, you're aiming to have a little bit more staying power here, because with the combination of Leftovers and the recovery that you get from Drain Punch, this will allow for Incineroar to have a little bit of a better time with withstanding hits in battle and lasting a lot longer than normal. So next up, ladies and gentlemen, we have ourselves a little bit of a gimmicky set, but just hear me out because it could actually prove to be effective. We have ourselves the Weakness Policy Incineroar set. Now, as for the ability, once again, should go without saying, we are going to be using Intimidate. Next up is the item known as Weakness Policy. Now, what this does is if you are able to survive a super effective hit, your attack and special attack both get a +2 boost, which is insane. As for the EV spread, we have ourselves 252 EVs into the HP, 4 into the special defense, and 252 into the speed, with a jolly nature to give you as much natural speed as possible. Now as for the moveset here, number 1, we have ourselves Bulk Up, which is going to boost your attack and defense by 1 stage. Next up, we have ourselves Flame Charge, which is going to boost your speed stat by 1 stage while dealing somewhat respectable damage with a base 50 power move. Next up, ladies and gentlemen, we have ourselves a dark type move known as Power Trip. Now, what Power Trip does is, depending on the amount of stat boost that you gain, Power Trip is going to increase in power by 20 base power points per stat boost, which is insane. And last but not least, guys, we have ourselves Substitute, which is going to sacrifice 25% of your HP to put up a decoy, so that way you are protected from status moves, and you can also be protected from weaker attacks that deals less than 25% of your maximum health. And next set, ladies and gentlemen, is known as the Bulk Up plus Special Defensive set. Now, this is where we take full advantage of Incineroar's ability to be a tank, and a surprisingly effective one at that. So the ability, once again, is going to be Intimidate. The item of choice is a new item this generation known as Heavy Duty Boots. Now, what this does is it prevents you from taking any form of entry hazard damage or being affected in any way, shape, and form by entry hazards. So, Heavy Duty Boots will shield you entirely from any effects whatsoever with entry hazards, which is absolutely amazing. Now, as for the EV spread, we ourselves 252 EVs into the HP, 4 into the defense, and 252 into the special defense with a careful nature to give you a further boost in your natural special defense. Now, as for the moves, first off, we have ourselves a Bulk Up, which is going to boost your attack and defense by 1 stage apiece. Next up is Drain Punch, which will give you a pretty solid amount of recovery depending on how much damage you inflict against your opponent, and it's also your only way to sustain yourself. So I would recommend bulking up a couple of times before firing off Drain Punches to get some of that good health back. Now, next up, ladies and gentlemen, we have ourselves Knockoff, which again is really solid with base 65 power and an added 50% boost in the power if you knock off your opponent's held item, removing any form of utility and annoying your opponents even more. And last but not least, guys, speaking of utility, we are going to be utilizing Will-O-Wisp here, which is a move that will cut your opponent's attack stat in half and status them with the burn condition, which will chip a little bit of their health away at the end of every turn. And this next set, ladies and gentlemen, is the Parting Shot Incineroar set, baby. Yes, this is another treat that Incineroar gets access to in Pokemon Sword and Shield. So let's get into this. The ability for choice, once again, is going to be Intimidate. The item of choice is going to be Heavy Duty Boots, which is going to allow for Incineroar to safely switch in, at least as far as entry hazards go. As for the EV spread, we have ourselves 252 EVs into the HP, 120 into the physical defense, and 136 into the special defense with a careful nature to further boost its natural special defense just a little bit more. So the first move that we got going on here is known as Parting Shot, which is a move that will lower your opponent's attack and special attack by 1 stage each and will allow for you to switch out right after. So it's a non-attacking variant of U-Turn, which is just absolutely amazing, especially given the fact that Incineroar is naturally slow to begin with base 60 speed. You will be able to get off a Parting Shot while taking a really solid hit, and you will be reducing the offenses of your opponents. So once you switch your replacement in, they will be able to have an advantage because not only will the opponent have reduced offensive stats, but also it is a guaranteed safe switch in, which will allow for you to have an advantage to set up or do whatever you need to do in battle. Next up, ladies and gentlemen, is Will-O-Wisp, because this right here is just really amazing utility paired with Parting Shot, and this will reduce the opponent's attack stat in half, as well as inflict them with the burn condition. Next up is Knockoff, which again is really solid on a set like this. You want to be as annoying as possible, right? This will knock off your opponent's held item and will be a good check against other utility Pokemon as well. And last but not least, we have ourselves a Drain Punch, so that way we have ourselves a little bit of an ability to have sustain, so that way we can last a little bit longer in battle. Now actually, ladies and gentlemen, before we end the video off here, I also want to showcase some more options for Incineroar, and depending on what set you choose to run for Incineroar, then these options might actually be good for you. So an item I would recommend to use on Incineroar would be Assault Vest, because while this locks you into damaging moves only, this boosts your special defense by 50%, and pair that with Intimidate with the ability to cut your opponent's attack stat down by 1 stage, you're going to be really bulky, surprisingly, right? So I also want to point out the fact that this Pokemon gets Blaze Kick, which is a rather respectable base 85 Fire-type move with a high critical hit ratio and a 10% chance to burn. We also have ourselves access to Earthquake here, which is a really solid base 100 Ground-type move that will be really solid against the likes of Rock, Steel, Electric, Fire, and many other kind of Pokemon. And this right here here is just overall a really solid option. Next up, ladies and gentlemen, we have ourselves Fake Out, which is only good for the first turn that you are active in battle. It's base 40, it's normal type, however, you have a 100% chance to flinch out the opponent, which is absolutely amazing. And speaking of amazing, this Pokemon also gets access to Low Kick. How cool is that? Now, depending on the weight of your opponent is where Low Kick is going to have the damage set in place. So if you are against a heavy opponent like Tyranitar, then Low Kick is going to do a lot of damage, and it's a solid fighting type move as well. And another option here when it comes to a held item for Incineroar would be Rocky Helmet. So this would be better off for more defensive and supportive sets. Now, what this does is it will allow for you to deal 1/6 recoil damage to any opponents that make contact with you. So this will be actually a really solid deterrent from any physical attackers that go one-on-one with you. Now, as for this, we have ourselves access to Taunt, which is a really solid move for Incineroar, because this allows for you to taunt the opponent into using attacking moves only. So this right here is especially good against Pokemon that are typically not known for offense. So things like Toxapex and Chansey, this right here will definitely shut them down in a heartbeat. Next up, we have ourselves Roar, which allows for you to force your opponent to switch out, which can actually be really solid if your opponent is relying heavily on setup, or if you have entry hazards that are all over your opponent's side of the field, and you phase them out with Roar, so that way the switch-in is going to suffer from the entry hazards, whether it is through Stealth Rock damage, through spikes, sticky web, what have you. This move is just overall really, really solid. Next up, we have ourselves Throat Chop here, which is a really respectable and interesting base 80 Dark-type move that allows for you to negate the opponent from using sound-based moves for 2 turns. So this could actually be really interesting, especially when there are Pokemon out there that rely on sound-based moves in order to get ahead in the battle. And we also have ourselves a good old classic Toxic here, which badly poisons the targets and will increase in the status damage at the end of every turn that Toxic is active. And it's just overall really freaking solid for something like Incineroar to have access to. So with all that being said, ladies and gentlemen, that's going to be a wrap up here for this competitive guide on how to use Incineroar. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I enjoyed making this for you guys, so honestly, it's awesome either way, because I love Incineroar, you love Incineroar, everybody loves Incineroar, baby, woo! So with that being said, and without further ado, that's going to be it here for the video, so I want to say thank you guys so very much for watching. If you guys did enjoy the video, you know what to do. Leave a like, subscribe, and most importantly, guys, smash it up in the comments down below, because I love, love, love hearing from you guys. Always have, always will, that ain't never going to change, baby. Woo! So thank you guys again for watching. Have yourself a wonderful day or night, depending on your time zone. And I'll see you guys in the next one.